Alright, hello, welcome back to the podcast once again, everybody. PayPal and Patreon links are both down below if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. So, despite recent events, China was actually already doomed anyways. At least from an economic standpoint. You see, initially, China began to have a sudden surge of development as all kinds of companies and manufacturers started rushing in. As initially, China was wide open and welcoming. Come on in, bring everybody, we got cheap labor, we got low taxes. We're going to try not to do anything that would pressure anybody to leave. Well, that was then, this is now. Things change. China's cheap labor is no longer cheap. So in that regard, companies and businesses that heavily rely on that in particular were already on their way out. But that's okay because there was still plenty of other stuff. However, as we keep going, more and more things started getting piled on, especially again once we entered China's current regime. One which has quickly decided to go down the strangling route of absolute totalitarian control over literally everything. And at first they thought they were, however the reality was quickly revealed to companies and industries operating within China that they were not exempt from all of these measures, and so gradually more and more stifling controls started being put on everything, and as one would probably expect, most businesses and companies tend to not really like that. So, especially these last several years, once we got into the later 2010s, many businesses and industries started exiting and relocating factories and production facilities, building new facilities and everything in other parts of the world, which again is not and would never be an overnight process. It's a medium to long-term ongoing thing. And many of the relocating destinations tending to be especially Vietnam, as well as Malaysia, Thailand, India, which is definitely of great irritation to China since India is their regional rival, and recently many even making the relocation jump back across the Pacific over to Mexico. So all of this, particularly over the 2010s and now into the 2020s, was beginning to pile on more and more. However, it did not cause things to get wobbly just yet up until now, partially because of another factor in all this, that China has been able to sort of artificially inflate its economic activity, actually not sort of, just blatantly inflate it via several means. One of the most famous is just endless government contracted or government by proxy contracted mass construction and real estate waves, often resulting in numerous ghost cities that you've probably heard about, as well as outright scamming their people, basically having millions upon millions of their people buying into home mortgages in advance on homes that they are supposed to receive eventually. However, as has been getting quickly exposed, none of those are actually getting built. Maybe some of them are, but most of them are they don't exist, and they're not going to exist. And so now that fact has been revealed to the population of China. That has caused them to get quite unsettled, which has been gradually resulting in larger and larger protests and non-physical or non-in-person protests in the form of millions of citizens refusing to pay these in-advance mortgages anymore. And so that massive bubble is likely going to be bursting soon, and thus take away Beijing's immediate ability to artificially enhance the appearance of their economic activity. The actual gradual damage that has been built up from all of the business and even factory relocations out of the country piling up is going to start becoming visible, all then also piling on top of things that have already been visible for the last 2 years, which is the incredible, particularly manufacturing and shipping export damage that Xi Jinping's obsession with citizen at-home imprisonment COVID ultra lockdowns has done to their output levels, as typically those last for months, and they are still taking that approach to this day, making various companies want to leave, and companies that were already leaving China want to leave faster, as they now realize that all of their operations in China could just be shut down for months on a whim. That is, of course, economically not appealing. Then, of course, we have the two big issues hanging over everything else, one of which is China's extremely harsh demographic collapse, in that despite the end of the one-child policy and even government incentives to have children, the number of young people in China is shrinking rapidly. Their ultimate COVID lockdown strategy has not helped things in the matter, as it has dropped their fertility rate from 1.7 all the way abruptly down to now around 1.05 or 1.06. By the end of this year, potentially heading to fall under 1. That's more of a medium to long-term thing, though. The grand looming topic hanging over everybody now that is much more immediate is Taiwan. Many of the foreign companies operating in China, or soon to be formally operating in China, they started seeing the writing on the wall of which has now become a giant flashing warning sign, or exit sign in their case. Basically, everybody knows what's coming, and it could result in all kinds of things. It could result in a more protracted war, where Beijing dictates that various factories and industries divert their efforts towards supporting the Chinese military effort, the potential impact of whatever sanctions may be imposed on China, and from China's angle, the most dangerous possibilities that the US Navy and others may blockade and cut off China's import shipping lines of various critical resources, which would obviously then grind their industrial and economic output to a halt, and thus grind the revenue and profits of companies operating in China to a halt. So that is tipping the scales even more in further of leaving, in which they were already sinking towards rock bottom at this point. That's that. So thank you everybody for sticking around and listening. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already. PayPal and Patreon links are down there if you want to support me. Thank you to anybody who does tremendously. And only do so if you actually can, though. Go subscribe to my cat's channel too, for way less depressing and way less anxiety-ridden content. Help us get her up to 1,000 subs before the November deadline. But no matter what happens to me, may God bless and protect all of you, and I will see you all around next time.